For the longest time, I believed I was the luckiest man alive. My wife, Emily, was everything I had ever dreamed of: beautiful, intelligent, and seemingly devoted. We had been married for 6 years, and from the outside, our life looked perfect. Friends often told me how lucky I was to have a woman like her, and I agreed. We traveled, hosted dinner parties, and always seemed to be on the same page about our future. Emily had a way of making me feel like I was the center of her world. She left little notes in my lunchbox, sent me affectionate texts during the day, and greeted me with a warm kiss every evening when I came home from work. Our conversations were filled with laughter, and we rarely fought. If I had any complaints, they were minor. Sometimes she was a bit distant, a little too caught up in her job, but I chalked it up to stress. Then the little things started to change. At first, it was subtle. She began working late more often, something that had never been an issue before. She was a marketing executive, and while I understood that deadlines could be demanding, it felt different. She stopped telling me about her day in detail. When I asked, she would just shrug and say, "Nothing interesting, just work." Then came the guarded phone. Emily had never been secretive about her phone before. We used to casually browse each other's devices without a second thought. But now, she would keep it close, always face down, and she started taking calls in another room. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off. "It's just office gossip, nothing you'd care about." The affection changed, too. The playful texts became less frequent. The long, meaningful kisses turned into quick pecks. Our once passionate nights together dwindled, replaced by excuses: too tired, too busy, or simply not in the mood. I convinced myself that it was normal. Marriage had its ups and downs, right? Still, the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. The first real crack in our illusion came on a Friday night. Emily had told me she had a work dinner and wouldn't be home until late. That was fine. I had a poker night with the guys. But when I casually checked her location on our shared app, something didn't add up. She wasn't at the restaurant she had mentioned. Instead, she was in a quiet residential neighborhood across town. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she had just dropped off a colleague or taken a wrong turn. But as I sat there staring at that blinking dot on the map, something inside me shifted. The illusion was starting to break. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, that I was being paranoid, that there was a perfectly innocent explanation for Emily's secretive behavior. But the feeling in my gut refused to go away. And then I found the proof. It happened on a Sunday morning, just a few days after the suspicious location incident. Emily was in the shower, and her phone, for once, was left unattended on the nightstand. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I knew it was wrong to invade her privacy, but hadn't she already invaded my trust? The screen lit up just as I reached for it. A message from an unsaved number. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." My chest tightened, my vision blurred. I felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. My hands clenched into fists as I read it again, hoping I had misread the words. But there it was, clear as day. Emily's voice pulled me back to reality. The water had stopped running. Any second now, she would walk out and see me holding her phone. I placed it back exactly where it was and forced myself to leave the room. My heart pounded as I sat on the couch, trying to process what I had just seen. Denial fought with logic. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was some stupid inside joke. Maybe... No. I couldn't lie to myself. The truth was right there. My wife was having an affair. I didn't confront her immediately, not because I was afraid, but because I needed to know the full story. Who was this other man? How long had this been going on? How deep did the betrayal run? Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own home. I checked her phone records, scrolling through endless late-night calls and frequent messages to the same unknown number. I went through our bank statements, noticing odd charges, hotel stays, fancy restaurants I had never been invited to. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator. If there was any chance I was overreacting, I needed to know for sure. But deep down, I already knew the answer. The PI worked fast. Within days, he had photos. Emily, my wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was caught on camera in the arms of another man. They weren't just meeting in secret. They were laughing, touching, kissing, completely at ease with their deception. The final blow came when I received the investigator's full report. Emily's affair wasn't new. It had been going on for nearly a year. A year. I stared at the evidence in front of me, feeling like a fool. The late nights, the sudden coldness, the guarded phone, it had all been there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I did. And I wasn't going to let it slide. Heartbreak is a strange thing. At first, it crushed me. An unbearable weight pressing down on my chest. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how Emily could do this to me. How she could lie to my face, sleep in our bed, kiss me like I was the only man in her life, while secretly giving herself to someone else. But then, something changed. The pain hardened into something sharper, something clearer. Rage. I wasn't going to cry myself to sleep while she continued her deception. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, pretending to be the perfect wife while making me a fool. I was going to expose her, and I was going to do it in the most humiliating way possible. Emily had always prided herself on being the perfect daughter and the golden child in her family. Her parents adored her, her siblings admired her, and every family gathering turned into a showcase of how wonderful her life was. I had been part of that illusion for years, smiling, nodding, playing the role of the devoted husband. So that's where it would happen. I planned it carefully. Emily's parents were hosting a formal family dinner that weekend. It was a special occasion, her father's birthday. Everyone would be there. Her parents, siblings, cousins, even a few close family friends. Emily was excited about it, reminding me multiple times to wear something presentable. I smiled and assured her I wouldn't embarrass her. Little did she know she was the one about to be embarrassed. In the days leading up to the dinner, I prepared everything. I gathered the photos from the private investigator, printed out the bank statements, saved the text messages. I even had a voice recording. An incriminating phone call I had managed to record when she thought I was asleep. Every piece of evidence was neatly organized in a sleek black folder, tucked away like a loaded weapon. I also made sure her affair partner wouldn't be around to warn her. A few anonymous messages sent from a burner phone, and he was effectively spooked, too paranoid to contact Emily for a while. She would be walking into that dinner completely unsuspecting. The night before the gathering, I watched her as she scrolled through her phone in bed, probably texting him, unaware that the walls were about to collapse around her. I felt nothing. No love, no sadness, just cold anticipation. By the time Saturday night arrived, I was ready. The tension in my chest wasn't nerves. It was the thrill of knowing that within hours, Emily's perfect world would crumble before her eyes. She thought she had fooled me. She thought she had gotten away with it. She had no idea what was coming. The atmosphere at Emily's parents' house was warm and celebratory. The dining room was filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the comforting aroma of home-cooked meals. Everyone was gathered around the large oak table, sharing stories and toasting to her father's birthday. Emily sat beside me, radiant as ever, flashing her perfect smile, effortlessly playing the role of the devoted wife. She had no idea that her carefully constructed facade was about to shatter. I waited patiently, sipping my wine, letting the conversation flow naturally. I wanted everyone to be comfortable before I detonated the bomb. When dinner was nearly finished and the mood was at its peak, I cleared my throat and tapped my glass with my fork. Before we continue, I have something I'd like to share with everyone. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Emily smiled, assuming I was about to say something sweet. Maybe a toast in her father's honor. She had no idea. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the black folder, placing it on the table. "I've recently learned something disturbing," I began, my voice calm and measured, "and I think it's only fair that everyone here knows the truth." A flicker of confusion crossed Emily's face. "What are you talking about?" she asked with a nervous chuckle. I ignored her and flipped open the folder. I pulled out the first page, a screenshot of one of her text conversations with her lover. I turned it toward her parents. "This is a message Emily received a few days ago," I said, my voice steady. "From a man she's been seeing behind my back." Gasps rippled around the table. Emily's mother's hand flew to her mouth. Her father's face darkened. Her younger sister looked between us, stunned. Emily's smile dropped. "This is ridiculous," she scoffed, shifting uncomfortably. "You're misunderstanding something." I remained unfazed. "Am I?" I asked, pulling out another piece of evidence, a photo of her in a hotel lobby, wrapped around another man. "Because this looks pretty clear to me." Her breath hitched. "Where did you get that?" "I hired a private investigator," I said smoothly. "He followed you, for weeks." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then her father's voice, low and furious. "Emily, is this true?" She scrambled for control. "Dad, please, it's not what it looks like. He's twisting things." I cut her off by pressing play on my phone. A recording of her voice filled the room. "I can't wait to see you again. God, I wish I didn't have to go home to him." Her words, her betrayal, played out for all to hear. Her mother gasped. Her sister looked like she was going to be sick. Her father slammed his fist on the table. "Enough!" he roared. "You lied to all of us?" Emily turned to me, her expression shifting from shock to desperation. "Please," she whispered. "Let's talk about this in private." I shook my head. "You didn't cheat in private, Emily. You don't get to beg in private." She stood up suddenly, knocking over her glass. "You planned this. You set me up to humiliate me." I met her eyes unflinching. "No, Emily. You did that to yourself." Tears welled in her eyes, but it was too late. Her family was disgusted. Her perfect image had crumbled. And I had won. Emily sat frozen, her face pale as the weight of the truth crashed down on her. The family dinner meant to celebrate her father's birthday had turned into her trial, and the verdict was clear: guilty. Her parents looked at her with sheer disappointment. Her father, a man who had always been proud of his daughter's achievements, now shook his head in disgust. Her mother wiped away silent tears. Her younger sister, who had always looked up to her, stared at her as if she were a stranger. "Get out," her father finally said. His voice was low, but firm. "I don't even want to look at you right now." Emily's lips trembled. "Dad, please." "You lied to your husband. You lied to us. And you made a mockery of your marriage," he spat. "You're not the daughter I raised." She turned to me, eyes pleading. "You've humiliated me enough. Can we please just talk, privately?" I shook my head. "We're long past that." She let out a choked sob, standing up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. Then she ran from the room, her heels clacking against the floor. I didn't go after her. That was the last time I saw her in that house. The divorce was swift. I had enough evidence to ensure I walked away with everything I deserved. She tried to fight me on it at first, but her lawyer quickly realized she had no leverage. She had destroyed our marriage, and everyone knew it. Word spread fast. Friends we had shared for years distanced themselves from her. Some tried to remain neutral, but most couldn't ignore the betrayal. The man she had risked everything for? He disappeared, ghosting her as soon as the truth came out. Turns out he wasn't willing to stick around when she had nothing left to offer but a ruined reputation. She reached out a few times, emails, late-night calls, even a handwritten letter. Apologies, desperate explanations, empty promises of change. I never responded. Emily had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. At first, the silence was deafening. After years of building a life with someone, the emptiness of being alone was unsettling. But as the weeks passed, I realized something. I felt lighter, freer. I didn't have to second-guess my own instincts anymore. I didn't have to wonder who she was texting, where she was going, or if her kisses were just a performance. The truth, as painful as it had been, had given me something invaluable: closure. I focused on myself. I threw myself into my work, reconnected with old friends, and started traveling again, this time for me. I learned to enjoy my own company. I discovered new passions. And most importantly, I promised myself I would never ignore the red flags again. Because trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Months later, I ran into a mutual friend who had recently seen Emily. "She's not doing great," they admitted. "She's lost a lot of friends. She tried to get back with that guy, but apparently he was cheating on her the whole time." I almost laughed at the irony. "She keeps saying she wishes she could take it all back," they continued, "that she messed up the best thing she ever had." But I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just indifference. Because I had already moved on. Betrayal is a painful teacher, but it teaches the most valuable lessons. I learned that love isn't just about passion or comfort. It's about trust, respect, and integrity. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't anger or retaliation. It's simply walking away without looking back.